Today, we're going to dig into a solution for a problem that pretty much haunts every single digital artist, designer, and indie game developer out there. It's this kind of creative chaos that happens right on their own computers, and it costs them time, money, and sometimes their absolute best ideas.
All right, let's just jump right in. Does this look familiar to you? I bet it does. This file name is basically a universal and pretty painful joke among anyone who's ever worked on a creative project. Come on, we've all been there, desperately trying to figure out which version is actually the final one.
But it's more than just a funny meme you'd see online. It's really a distress signal. It points to this huge unresolved issue in the creative world. We just don't have version control tools that were actually built for artists.
So let's talk about what this actually looks like day to day. This is the artist file nightmare, and the cost of all this disorganization is very, very real.
And this really illustrates the consequences perfectly. I mean, we're talking about work getting permanently lost or overwritten. Poof! Hours, even days of effort just gone. There's no good way to search through a project's history, no safe space to just experiment with a wild idea without making a dozen confusing copies of a file. And forget about being able to just roll back to a previous version when something goes wrong. So you might be asking, why is this still a problem in this day and age? Well, there are tools out there. The issue is, as we're about to see, they're fundamentally the wrong tools for the job.
What's so interesting here is how this really maps out the giant workflow gap that artists fall into. See, on one end, you have simple stuff like Google Drive. It's easy, but it's not a real version control system. It's just organized chaos. Then you have Git, which was built by engineers for engineers. It's amazing for code, but it is an absolute nightmare for a visual artist who's working with gigantic art files. And way over on the other end is Perforce. It's the standard for huge AAA game studios, but its price tag and insane complexity mean it's totally out of reach for any indie team.
So this massive gap in the market, it really begs the question, right? What if someone actually built a GitHub for artists? A system designed from the ground up just for them. And that, right there, is the core idea behind ArtVCS. The mission is to treat these huge creative files, we're talking Photoshop documents, 3D models, with the same care and respect that code gets, but to do it in a visual, intuitive way, so artists don't have to become command line wizards just to save their work properly.
So, how does it actually solve those problems we talked about? Well, it boils down to a few key things. First, visual diffs. This means you can literally see the changes between two versions of an image, side by side. Then there are creative timelines, which are basically safe sandboxes where you can experiment without messing up the main project. And finally, simple file locking, which stops that ultimate nightmare scenario where you and a teammate accidentally overwrite each other's work.
Okay, but here's the big question. A service that has to handle such enormous files, that's gotta be super expensive, right? How could it ever be affordable for indie creators? Well, let's look at the financial blueprint, because one single smart tech choice makes the whole thing possible. You see, the biggest hidden cost for services like this is something called egress fees. It's a fancy term, but basically cloud providers like Amazon charge you every single time a user downloads a file from your service. It's like a tax on data. But by choosing an alternative like Cloudflare R2, which has zero egress fees, that entire cost just vanishes. And this is the magic number that changes the entire game, 0. By completely eliminating egress fees, you get rid of the single biggest variable cost in the whole operation. That lets you pass those savings right on to your users. It's the key that unlocks an affordable service. And the result is a pretty dramatic shift in pricing. Instead of paying $25, $30, even $40 a month like competitors charge, ArtVCS can aim for a price that indie devs and freelancers can actually afford. It opens up this kind of professional tool to a whole new world of creators. And here's the real kicker. You'd think with a price that low, it couldn't possibly be a good business, right? Wrong. Because those core costs are so incredibly low, the projected gross margin is over 82%. For a software company, that is incredibly healthy. It's a win for the user, and it's a win for the business. So let's zoom out a little bit. What's the bigger impact here? This is about more than just managing files a little better. This is about actually reshaping how creative people collaborate. For any indie creator, this means finally having a single, reliable source of truth for their whole project. It means having the freedom to experiment without fear, knowing you can always just go back. It means way less time wasted fighting with files and a lot more time actually creating. And maybe most importantly, it gives you peace of mind, protection against that catastrophic loss of your hard work. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What new creative doors could open up? What kind of amazing things could be made if artists were truly free to create without ever having to fear that their work could just disappear?